What's up, everybody? It is a frigid, windy November Friday morning easy run, about 5 days removed from my most recent marathon where I PR'd but came up short of my ultimate goal to go sub 3 hours. So decided to start documenting the progress, the journey towards a sub 3 hour marathon. I should call this vlogging pace instead of conversational pace, because this takes a lot more intention and concentration. Maybe a better beginning point is to talk about where I started with this whole running thing. Easy 6 miles. Let's get inside. It's freezing out here. I grew up hating running, like to the point where at times in high school, I contemplated no longer playing sports because I hated running and conditioning just that much. So I was more surprised by anyone that when I got to college and figured, I have to do some sort of exercise if I'm going to be somewhat healthy, that I turned to distance running. It wasn't until my junior year in college when I met a friend who happens to now be my girlfriend of 4.5 years that she asked me if I'd be interested in running a half marathon. I had never run a 5K race, a 10K race, a turkey trot, anything. I had never raced once in my life. So of course, me wanting to prove something, whether it was to her or to myself, I don't know, but I said yes. I run my first half marathon, didn't train very well at all. At a bare minimum, I made sure I ran 3 or 4 times a week. There was no structure, there was no awareness of tempo runs or threshold runs or speed work, fartleks, anything. All I knew was that I needed to run 3 times during the weekdays and a slightly longer run on the weekend. And for the most part, I did that to some success, I guess, for a debut half marathon. I think I ended up somewhere in the high 140s, somewhere around like an hour 48, hour 49. And that was fine with me. I had finished it. I had run a half marathon as my first race, and I went on my merry way. And then I really didn't race again for an almost full 2 years. That was the end of 2018, and it wasn't until the end of 2020 that I raced again. So between then, I was jogging 3, 4, max 5 times a week, a couple miles here and there, and then COVID hit in early 2020, and I decided I think it's time to get back into this running thing because there just isn't a lot going on right now. So that was the first time, 2020 after COVID, that I decided I would train in some sort of structured way for a race. And since I was familiar with the half marathon, I decided to do another one of those. I ended up training pretty consistently over the course of the end of the summer of 2020 into the fall. And I was aiming for about 135 and I ran a 133 and a half marathon, which I was really, really happy with. And from then on, I was absolutely obsessed with running and training. I think the day I got home from that half marathon, I signed up for another one that was 8 weeks away. Ended up getting canceled because of COVID, but I still ran a time trial in my hometown. And in a matter of 8 weeks, I went from a 133 half marathon to a 128 half marathon. So I cut 5 minutes off my half marathon time in 8 weeks, which I, again, was extremely happy with. And after that, I decided that, enough of half marathons. It was time to fully dip my toes into this running thing and do a full marathon. I knew everything would be generally longer, but I didn't know how demanding training seriously for a marathon would be. But, I quickly found out. And I was really, really confident that I would get a good result. And I got really ambitious and decided to shoot for a sub 3-hour marathon on my first try. I figured, you know what? I've run 133 training semi-seriously for a half marathon. 8 weeks later, I ran a 128 for a half marathon. May as well shoot for a sub 3 hours, see if we can stack 2 of those on top of each other. Again, I was training through the winter and the early spring where it's extremely cold in Pennsylvania, and it happened to be 85 degrees by 7 a.m. at the start of the race on my first marathon race day. I came through halfway feeling all right. I was aware of how hot it was compared to what I had trained in for the past 4 or 5 months, and ended up absolutely crashing and burning. I knew I had to fuel. I had a general sense of what fueling on the run looked like, but I had no way to combat 85 to 90 degree temperatures when I had trained in such cold conditions. And I ran a 3:15, I think, upper 3:15s for my first marathon. So I missed the mark by a good 15 minutes, but for my first marathon, I was happy to finish, happy to survive, and it felt good to be in reasonable, shooting distance of what my goal was, even though it was a quarter of an hour off. So again, fully obsessed with running at that point. Old Connor, who hated running, was gone. And I again immediately signed up for another marathon. I wanted another crack at it. I thought I had been sort of presented with unfair conditions, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make sure I race in cold conditions this time. I signed up for my first fall marathon, which would take place in November, nearly guaranteeing that it would be cold out. And it was. I put together another pretty serious training block of about 18 or 20 weeks. I ended up running a 3:09. So again, shot for another sub 3. Came up short, wasn't because of the heat this time, but was because of hamstring cramps, which would become a theme as I went towards my third marathon. So I kind of was burnt out a little bit after being obsessed with training, obsessed with racing since the end of 2020. In the span of less than a year, I had run multiple half marathons in my buildups, multiple marathons, trained more than ever for something, and I just needed a break. From after November of 2021 up until about midway through the summer of 2022, I was just kind of jogging around. I was just doing easy running, 35 to 50 miles a week, and just didn't train for anything. But about midway through the summer 2022, I decided I would run another marathon. So I signed up for the Harrisburg, PA Marathon, another November marathon, hoping for cold conditions and another sub 3 attempt. Only had 12 weeks to train this time because of how late I signed up for it, which was significantly shorter than my other training blocks. But I felt good. I thought the sort of brevity of this training block benefited me. I didn't feel burnt out at any point. I felt like I would peak right at the right time because in past training blocks, felt like I peaked fitness-wise kind of early. So maybe 12 weeks would work for me. And I went through the half in about 128 and I was feeling good. There were really strong wind conditions. The week before this marathon had been that sort of record heat wave with the New York City Marathon, and it was really hot in my taper, and I had a stomach bug at the beginning of my taper week. I wasn't really eating much of anything. I had no appetite. I was losing hydration like crazy throughout the week. So given all of that and a slight recovery right before race day, coming through half in 128, I was confident. I thought I would be there. I thought I had a real chance at it, but all of a sudden the winds just picked up like crazy and we were facing 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts pretty consistently throughout the marathon on a course that had a lot of hairpin turns, and we had to cross a bridge a number of times, and it felt like we were going to get freaking lifted off of the bridge, fly over into the river. I just died down during the second part of that marathon, and I hit the wall around mile 22. I was still on pace through 22 miles, but I just couldn't hold on in the wind. And instead of just hamstring cramps, every single muscle in my leg cramped up, and it was calf cramps, quad cramps, hamstring cramps. I couldn't hold it together. I kind of hobbled my way into the finish line after feeling great during the first half and ended 3 hours, 6 minutes, and 6 seconds, which was a PR, but again, was the third time that I had shot and trained for a sub-3 marathon and came up short. Here we are. It is November of 2022, a couple days after that failure at another sub-3, and I am aiming for yet another one. But this time, I'm gonna wait another year. I'm gonna do a marathon next fall 2023, and hopefully I can get there this time. So throughout this series on this channel, I'm gonna document all my races, all my training leading up to that sub-3 attempt again in fall of 2023. In the meantime, I'm gonna be doing some shorter distance races. I'm gonna work on some 5K stuff, some 10K stuff. I'm signed up for a half marathon in April of 2023. So for the next couple weeks, I'm gonna be taking things easy, just kind of getting back into the swing of it before I kind of fully send it for a hopeful PR in the half marathon in spring of 2023, before I hunker down and shoot for another sub-3 in fall of 2023. Between then and now, hope you stick around, hope you're interested. I'd love to hear about your recent races in the comments, some of your training tips, some of your favorite shoes, whatever it is, we're gonna tackle it all on this channel. So thanks for tuning in, hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.